Hello everybody, welcome back to this week's Fit Tip Friday. The topic that we're gonna cover this week, 3 best ways how to track your fitness progress. I was thinking about basically 3 main components that could maybe help you reflect on and to see if you have been making progress or not, or if it's time to a change. So let's get into it. The first thing, in my professional opinion, is in regards to your progress, if you are able to stay consistent. And so a lot of people are always getting off to a good start to when you have a, so to speak, New Year's resolutioners that start January 1st, and then, you're trying to work out for a couple of weeks or even a month or two. What I have been noticing over the past roughly 2 years, though, is that even though you get consistent for a couple of weeks, or maybe even, like I said, a month or 2 or 3, I think the biggest component as far as consistency goes really shows after about a 6 months window. And the reason I say 6 months is because when you have a life outside of the gym and you're not a professional athlete or model, or when working out is essentially how you make your living, is your life, then there's a lot of other factors that will come into play. And so people go on vacations, you have social interactions that you have with other, like you go hang out with your friends, you have stuff with your family going on, and so you don't live at the gym. And so to really see whether or not you can make it fit with your schedule and you've been able to actually do your workouts in a consistent manner, in my opinion, 6 months or more is a very good way for you to kind of see whether or not things have been working out. And on that note as well, if you have been able to do that and not take any major breaks in between, because sometimes when you go on a vacation, or let's say good old holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all that kind of stuff, and all that bunched together, it takes people way long time to kind of get back in the swing of things, which in itself, it's not a bad thing. Like, it's okay if you take a few days off. Like I said, you go on vacation, the holidays are there, and you make it to the gym maybe once or twice a week instead of 3 or 4 or 5 times, whatever it may be. But the important thing is that the days don't into weeks, and that the weeks don't turn into months of not going. Because in the end, if you do fall off the wagon, if you stop exercising, going to the gym, maybe if you do it at home, wherever, then typically speaking, there's something that needs to change. Either it's a change of priority, maybe you have been doing too much, maybe you've been trying to go too often, or maybe you've been potentially doing the wrong workouts if you don't, if you haven't been as excited about the workouts as you maybe did in the beginning. And as far as the schedule goes, you have to make a conscious effort to make it, right? Like to go to the gym, because it doesn't just fall in your lap. But you also shouldn't. I don't believe that you shouldn't feel rushed. And so, if you only have time to do a 30 or 45-minute workout, that is totally okay. If that's all that you can, if that's what you have time for, if that's what works for you. If you can average an hour and a half, and you like to take your sweet ass time right in the middle of the day, that's beautiful as well. But if you essentially plan workouts, and I've been in this boat many times, where you have all this stuff written down, and then you get through, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of the way through, you have 2 or 3 movements left, and then you're already an hour and a half, hour 45 in, it's like, oh my god, this is going to be a 2-hour monster again, then that's simply too much. And if that happens too often, then that is something that you should address to make sure that it doesn't. All right, number 2, a little bit more workout specific or program specific, depending on how you go about it, is to see if you have been able to increase your weights, maybe your working volume, and potentially even the difficulty of your exercises. As we go to the gym, we usually always want to increase our strength, right? So you want to be able to lift a little bit more weight, maybe do a couple more reps on sets with the same amount of weight, hence the volume. And so that's one of the things where I'm a huge believer in, number 1, writing your stuff down so you can actually keep track of what you have been, even if you only do workouts and don't have a per se like a 12-week training block that you're trying to follow. But at least you know what you have been doing. If you are doing group fitness classes, that's a little harder to do. But in that case, it's still up to you. Like, you can still sort of remember, literally, like, write notes afterwards, essentially, on how things have been going. The other component is also your mobility. And so when we talk about general exercising, I think it's incredibly important then from a mechanical standpoint that you are learning and that you are aware of how far a movement can go as far as the range of motion. So when we talk about a good old squat, should you be able to do a quarter squat? Should you squat to 90 degrees, or should you try to go ass to grass or all the way down to the bottom? In my opinion, unless you have a legit medical reason for why you wouldn't be able to squat super low, I think you should always try to practice and train to squat as deep as you possibly can. Not only is this going to give you quite a bit more strength gains and overall, and also like build your muscles better, but it also helps with your mobility. And so I don't think that people want to spend too much time, stretching or doing specific mobility. But if you work out well and you move through full ranges of motion, and you try to kind of push the end ranges of motion, and you're actually consciously trying to connect the muscles, I know it's getting a little deep, that is going to essentially do several things at the same time. You build more muscle, you get stronger, and you increase your range of motion without having to spend too much, if any, extra time mobilizing. But it'll take a little while to get there. As far as we talked about weights, mobility, volume and stuff, but then also as far as your skill level goes with the exercises, I think that that's also an important thing to keep in mind, and a very basic thing to look at is if you're essentially able to move away from maybe machines. Not that machines are bad for you, but free weights in many cases will just give you a little bit better results and are a little bit more challenging than in stationary machines are. And by, let's say, instead of doing a leg press or maybe a goblet squat where you hold the weight in front, that you now start to play around with maybe a barbell back squat. And so those movements are a lot more complex as far as you talked about before with hidden depth and stuff. That's really something where you could see an improvement on. And again, as far as tracking goes, writing down your numbers, your reps and all that kind of stuff, you could also take, just like social media does every single day, take videos of yourself. Maybe don't post them if you don't want to, but record yourself so that over the weeks and months or even years you have some footage, and so you can literally watch your progress. And then the last thing, of course, is your physique changing at all. Now, I don't like to make everything about losing or gaining weight, because the number on the scale is something that messes with way too many people's heads, and there's way more components to the number that's on the scale versus how you actually look or may feel. So that's why for the first point of this, I don't really care what your weight is. I would rather care to see how your clothes fit differently. And this is a very classic example that maybe you have done this in the past, so this might not be news to you. But if you're able to essentially fit in a pair of pants that you've had for many years and haven't been able to fit in for a long time, pay attention to that. Because in the end, when we're talking about basically losing fat and gaining muscle, the weight on the scale may not necessarily change. Now, if you are significantly overweight, or you have more than maybe 10 or 15 or 20 pounds to lose, then obviously the scale is probably going to change. But if you have, if you only want to, let's say, tighten things up a little bit, like if you've been a little slacky with your food over the summer or whatever it may be, if you've put on a few pounds, the scale itself might not actually change, but the way that your clothes fit. Because as you essentially, you could kind of say, as you replace the fat with muscle, the mass will stay the same, but the ratio will change. And so you may feel and look denser, but the weight on the scale doesn't change. So that's why I don't really like, in many cases, that's why I don't like to use actual weight change as measurements, but that's why I think clothes in the first place is a great way to look. It's a good thing to look at. And then lastly, when we talk about seeing physical change, again, we're not using the scale as a reference here, but when we talk about taking pictures. And so this could be something super simple as, like, I've had this happen with a client last week, where you simply just look at pictures from yourself from 1 or 2 years ago. You may not have actual, taken front, side, and back progress pictures, but you just take a look back and from a year or two ago, or maybe even 6 months ago, from where you've been, and that can be a really good indicator as well, as far as, are you actually changing? Are you making progress? Again, gaining, losing weight? Are you just trimming up more? Do you look stronger, a little bit more muscular, and just fitter, or not? And so again, this is completely up to you if you wanted to take it, do it shirtless and really kind of a very raw look at yourself, or if you simply want to do it more in a holistic way, where you simply review your pictures or when at family gatherings, once every few months, and kind of see where things go from there. I hope for you guys that these were some helpful tips. If you would like me to cover some different components next time, please let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't done so already, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe to this channel. I'm trying to always give you guys honest and true, good information with these things, and I'm working on developing a couple more different topics to bring out during the week. But this was it for this week's Fit Tip Friday. I hope you guys have a really good weekend, and we'll be back next week. Keep hitting those weights.